When I first met Emily, her warmth and down-to-earth personality completely captivated me. She was often seen tending to the plants on her balcony, always with a gentle smile that could light up anyone's day. Over time, we started crossing paths more often. Sometimes, as I walked by, she'd smile and ask, "How are you?" There was a kindness in her voice that made me feel at ease. At first, I was a little shy, but soon we began having casual conversation. One day, I was in my apartment on the third floor, studying, when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Emily standing there, holding a plate of freshly baked cookies and a cup of coffee. With a warm smile, she said, "I thought you might like some company. I figured we could have coffee together." Her thoughtful gesture touched my heart. As we sat and chatted over coffee, I learned that she was also living alone in the city. Her husband traveled frequently for work, and her family lived out of state. There was a genuine honesty and simplicity in the way she spoke, and it drew me closer to her. From that day on, our conversations became more frequent. Sometimes she'd help me with small things, and other times I'd lend her a hand. But our relationship always stayed within the bounds of respect and friendship. Hello everyone, and welcome to our channel. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our exciting stories. Today's story is going to be special, so make sure to stick around till the end. Let's spread in. Time flew by, and her friendship became an important part of my life. Her kindness and the way she valued the little moments taught me so much about life. This all happened about a year ago when I was 22 and had just moved to Seattle for my studies. I fell in love with the city almost instantly. Though I was new to the area, I quickly found a place to live with the help of some friends. My apartment was on the top floor of a three-story building, and Emily lived on the second floor. She was in her early 30s, and the first time I saw her, I felt like I was looking at someone straight out of a dream. There was something about her presence that was magnetic, not just her beauty, but her calm and welcoming nature. Emily's husband worked for a big tech company and was often away on business trips. She also had a toddler, though you'd never guess she was a mom just by looking at her. I found myself looking for excuses to see her, eager to strike up a conversation, but I always held back because of her husband. One day, as luck would have it, some of my laundry accidentally fell onto her balcony. I saw it as an opportunity to talk to her. My heart raced as I stood at her door for the first time. I rang the doorbell, and after a moment, she answered. She had just come out of the shower, her wet hair cascading over her shoulders, and she looked even more radiant than usual. I was completely mesmerized by her simplicity and beauty as she smiled and said, "Hey, what's up?" I nervously explained that some of my clothes had fallen onto her balcony and asked if I could retrieve them. She chuckled and said, "Oh, sure, wait here. I'll grab them for you." As I stood there waiting, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. When she returned with my clothes, she asked, "Are you new here? What's your name?" I stammered a bit, but managed to say, "I'm Alex. Yeah, I just moved here a few weeks ago for school." She nodded and said, "Nice to meet you, Alex. I'm Emily." There was a warmth in her tone that made me feel comfortable. I gathered the courage to keep the conversation going and asked, "So, what do you do?" She laughed and said, "Oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. But please, no formalities. Just call me Emily." Her easygoing nature put me at ease, and for a moment, I thought about staying longer to chat. But then I remembered I had some work to finish, so I politely excused myself. "Thanks again, Emily. I'll catch you later," I said. She smiled and replied, "Anytime, Alex. See you around." As I walked back to my apartment, I couldn't get her smile out of my mind. The image of her standing there with her wet hair and gentle expression stayed with me for the rest of the day. That night, as I sipped my coffee, I couldn't help but think about how much her small act of kindness had brightened my day. I couldn't sleep that night. Emily's words and her laughter kept replaying in my mind. Her easygoing and carefree nature made me even more curious about her. Everything about her, her smile, her voice, her presence, was all I could think about. I kept wondering when and how I get the chance to see her again. That night, I barely slept. and by the time morning came, I was still restless. A couple of days passed like this. One morning, I was standing on my balcony, sipping coffee, when I noticed Emily hanging laundry on her balcony. She seemed a little flustered when she saw me, quickly adjusting her robe before heading back inside. That's when it hit me. Emily was truly beautiful, and I couldn't stop thinking about how to take our conversations further. A few days later, I ran into a guy who lived in the building. From him, I learned that Emily's husband was often away on business trips. The next day, I happened to meet Emily on the rooftop while she was drying some chips in the sun. As she walked, her robe got caught under her foot, and she stumbled. I rushed to help her up, but she couldn't stand on her own. She insisted she was fine, but I gently lifted her into my arms. For a moment, she closed her eyes, and I felt a strange connection. Reluctantly, I carried her back to her apartment and laid her down on the bed. "Emily, are you in a lot of pain?" I asked, concerned. She winced and said, "My leg and hip hurt pretty badly." I carefully checked her leg, moving her toes up and down to see if there was any serious injury. She watched me curiously and asked, "What are you doing?" I explained, "I'm just checking to see if there's a fracture. Does it hurt when I do this?" She shook her head and said, "I don't think it's broken, but it's definitely sore." I smiled, slightly relieved. "You have any pain relief cream?" I asked. She nodded and pointed to a drawer nearby. "It's in there." I quickly grabbed the cream and, without thinking, began applying it to her hip. Emily seemed a little embarrassed, and I realized that maybe no one outside her family had ever been this close to her. After a while, I noticed her pain wasn't subsiding. "I think I need to see a doctor," she said. I immediately called her doctor, who came over and confirmed there was no major injury, just a sprain that required rest and medication. That evening, I cooked dinner and brought it to her room. "If you need help getting up, I can stay with you," I offered. She hesitated but finally said, "Just help me to the bathroom once, and I'll manage for the rest of the night." I supported her as she slowly walked to the bathroom, waiting outside while she freshened up. While she was inside, I found a cane in her room. When she came out, I handed it to her. "This might help you walk at night," I said. She laughed and teased, "Are you trying to make me feel old?" I grinned and replied, "No one could ever call someone as beautiful as you old." She smiled, clearly pleased, and thanked me. Before leaving, I made sure she was comfortable. "Lock the door from inside," I said. "I'll keep the spare key with me in case you need anything." She agreed, and I headed back to my apartment. The next morning, I woke up early and made tea for her. When I knocked on her door, she was already awake. I handed her the tea and asked, "Do you need help getting to the bathroom?" She smiled and said, "I think I can manage now. I've gotten used to the cane." Over the next couple of days, I continued to help her, but every time I saw her, I felt a growing tension. My feelings for her were becoming harder to ignore, and I could tell she noticed. There was a subtle shift in the way she looked at me, a mix of curiosity and something deeper. Eventually, the dynamic between us changed. I started visiting her apartment more often, no longer feeling hesitant. My eyes would linger on her, and she seemed to understand what I was feeling. Emily began opening up to me more, and our conversations became more personal. Her husband, Mark, had also become aware of the situation and seemed grateful for my help, especially since he was often away. Mark and I started talking more, and he seemed less worried about Emily being alone when he wasn't around. Emily began inviting me over for meals, and I even spent time playing with her son, which made her feel more at ease. But my focus was always on her. I could see the unspoken feelings in her eyes, and I was sure she could see mine too. Yet she never acted on it, which only made my longing grow stronger. Finally, the day I'd been waiting for arrived. The building was hosting a small get-together, and Emily was planning to attend. When I went to her apartment to let her know the time, she said, "Mark won't be able to make it tonight. He has a company event to attend," I replied. "Okay, Emily, but you're still coming, right?" She laughed and said, "Yes, I'll be there. And I even have a little New Year's gift for you." Curious, I asked excitedly, "What's the gift?" "Tell me, Emily." She smiled mischievously and said, "I can't tell you now. It's a surprise." I grinned and said, "All right, keep your secret." I'll wait. Later that evening, around 9 p.m., the party kicked off. Emily arrived, and as always, her beauty took my breath away. She looked stunning, like an angel. She was wearing a red dress that accentuated her elegance, and everyone at the party couldn't help but notice her. Even the other women seemed a little envious of her charm. As the night went on, the music started, and people began dancing. I gathered the courage to ask Emily to dance, but she initially refused. When I asked again, she smiled and said, "It feels like I dressed up just for you." Her words made my heart race, and we started dancing together. I couldn't help myself. I moved a little closer to her, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in and whispered in my ear, "It took you 3 months to finally say something. I like you too, you know." Her words filled me with joy, and I could barely wait for the party to end. We danced and laughed until midnight, when everyone cheered and wished each other a happy new year. We all cut the cake together, and by 1 a.m., people started heading home. As we were leaving, I reminded Emily about my gift. "So, where's my surprise?" I asked. She smiled, leaned in, and kissed me on the cheek. "There's your gift," she said softly. We walked back to our building together, and as we reached her apartment, she suddenly pulled me closer. I hesitated and asked, "What about Mark? Is he back?" She shook her head and said, "He called earlier. He won't be back until morning." I nodded, but then I remembered her son. "What about Jake?" I asked. She reassured me. "He fell asleep during the party. He's in his room." In that moment, the tension between us became undeniable. We gave in to our feelings, and the months of longing finally came to an end. We indulged in the act of love. Afterward, Emily gently reminded me, "You should go now. Mark could be back any time." I nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation, and quietly returned to my apartment. From that day on, my life began to change. Whenever Mark was away, Emily and I would spend time together, talking about books, sharing life experiences, and growing closer. She became not just a lover, but also a mentor. One day, she told me, "You need to focus more on your studies and career. That's what will shape your future." Her words motivated me, and I started taking my goals more seriously. With her guidance, I worked harder, improved myself, and eventually achieved my dreams. Both Emily and Mark supported me every step of the way. So, dear friends, that's the end of our story today. What did you think? Let us know in the comments. Your feedback means a lot to us. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on our upcoming tales. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video with another exciting story. Until then, take care.